All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the inaugural episode of the Teachers Talk podcast. This is a podcast for teachers, teacher candidates, and anyone interested in teaching by teachers themselves. So my name is Alex, but throughout these podcasts, I'll be going by Jeff, as that's what my professional counterparts know me as. And today we're going to be talking about our experiences in first year of Teachers College. And I'm joined by my colleagues, David and Alex. So guys, why don't you introduce yourselves?
Hey everyone, my name is David. I'm part of the intermediate senior teaching program at York University with teachables in math and physics. And previously, I did a civil engineering undergraduate degree and a minor in construction engineering and management.
Hi everyone, my name is Alexander, but feel free to call me Alex. I'm also in the intermediate senior stream at York University. My teachables are science, general, and geography, and I completed my undergraduate degree at McMaster University in Hamilton with a major in life sciences and a minor in geography.
Perfect. And then, yeah, as you guys know me, my name is Alex, but I'm going by Jeff. And I have a Bachelor of Education in Biochemistry and Biotechnology, and then a Master's in Science it's in Chemistry with the subdisciplines of Biochemistry and Biophysics. And then, yeah, now we're all in the intermediate senior division at York University. So I guess let's move into our first question. All right, so guys, why did you decide to go to Teachers College?
So initially, Teachers College wasn't actually in my plans. When I started to rethink my career choice a couple years ago, I think my family was really influential and contributed to my choice of Teachers College, with my brother being a current teacher and my parents being two retired teachers. So I've really seen them work and love teaching and coaching throughout the many years that I've been alive. And then I really needed to try it out. So after doing some work with youth ministry and some younger people at my local parish, as well as coaching a high school soccer team, I knew that teaching would be the right path for me.
In terms of myself, I mean, similar to David's story in terms of kind of like the family connection, like my mom's currently an early childhood educator, but in Europe, she was a certified teacher. Her father, my grandfather, was a teacher and a principal of an elementary school, and he retired about 10 years ago now, I think this upcoming June. He retired 10 years ago. And so obviously, like the family connection was there, kind of runs in the blood on the maternal side. But like David, I also wasn't dead set on pursuing a bachelor's of education in terms of when I was in my undergrad. I was kind of split between medicine and pharmacy and education, and so I tried both. And by the time I got to third year, I realized that pharmacy and kind of healthcare wasn't meant for me. And even though I had the grades for it, it's just not something I could see myself doing and being happy with. And so that's when I kind of decided to lean more towards education, polishing up my application, stuff like that. And so, yeah, kind of like David, it took a while for me to kind of see myself in the career path, but it all turned out, it turned out great. So I'm very happy I was accepted, and yeah, I'm looking forward to another year of it.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Yeah, I would say that I've got some similarities to the two of you, but my case is a little bit different. Just in the sense that I actually don't have anyone in my family who's been a teacher or even ever thought about being a teacher. So it was a big difference, or it was a bit of a shock to my family when I decided to go into teaching. Um, for me, I mean, I was going down the academic route. I had pursued my master's and I was really good at my project. I was really good at what I was doing. I was thinking about doing an MD PhD or going to medical school. And I actually had a couple offers for that that were sort of open. But at the end of the day, I think there were some politics that happened where I was, and I just sort of got pushed away from continuing down the academic route, even though I had all the scholarships and everything to back it up in a couple publications. But I really got experience with TAing because you have to do that in grad school, and I just sort of fell in love with it, and I just decided that's what I'll do. Um, so yeah, that's sort of where I'm at right now, and then met all of you
Yeah,
guys
that's
starting
awesome.
off.
Hmm.
But yeah, so for the two of you, what were your overall impressions of first year, and was it what you were expecting?
So first year, what was all right, I'd say. I think every program, honestly, will have some aspects you enjoy, and some you. I definitely found it quite different from engineering and my previous experiences with schooling. There was a lot of reflection this year and theory related to teaching pedagogy, and definitely because of online learning and COVID, a lot less application and practical teaching. But I honestly think it was a successful year for me personally. I wasn't really sure what to expect going into the education program. Definitely some of the stereotypes that I thought about teaching were debunked pretty quickly. Um, some courses were definitely a lot more difficult to relate to and see
Yeah.
relevance for my professional development. But overall, I'd say I had a pretty good experience.
Yeah, I'd say the same thing. It was definitely different compared to an undergrad in, a STEM field, sciences, mathematics, engineering. And so in that case, it was kind of weird in the same sense that David described it in terms of, the type of kind of analysis that you're doing. When you're in a STEM program, you're doing kind of more empirical analysis, or you're analyzing more data and stuff like that, especially in the sciences. Whereas what I found in my first year here at York so far, as awesome as it's been, honestly, I've had a blast, and met so many great people, but there is a lot more reflection and a lot more kind of opinion based stuff, which is not something that you really encounter a lot in a science or engineering based undergraduate degree. And so that was, I guess, the kind of weird part for me. um, a lot more, in my opinion, at least, subjective things as opposed to objective things. Because I think STEM, like, our topics are generally more objective, whereas a lot of stuff that we've been taught in some of our classes is a lot of it is opinion based, and 99% of the time I agree with what's being taught to us and what we're being told, but at the same time, kind of having more reflection, analyzing more theory was a little bit weird. Um, so I'm definitely on the same page as David in terms of that stuff. But yeah, I mean, I've certainly enjoyed it so far. I've learned a great deal, met great people. Obviously, the whole online component, it's tough to get practical teaching. Um, but yeah, that's about it.
Yeah, and I think I'll probably echo the opinions of the two of you. Like, I agree that it was a little more objective than what I'm used to, especially after going through the masters. Everything is data driven. But I will say I thoroughly enjoyed it, but it was very different than lecturing in university and TAing there. Um, I also was surprised. I guess I had in my head a little bit that we would be looking into our curricula and sort of like learning practical teaching strategies. And I think that's something that's more addressed in your school based practicums in second year. So I was a little bit surprised that we didn't really get any of that in first year. Even in our
Hmm.
elective courses there, where we were covering topics in our teachables, we still didn't get a lot of engagement with the curricula or how to utilize the curricula to make effective lessons. I think that was more through either a community based practicum or like a couple other mini projects. But
Yeah,
yeah,
for sure.
overall, I enjoyed it. But yeah. So I guess for the two of you, was there anything that surprised you about first year then?
I would definitely say just being online probably contributed to a lot of differences in, I guess, my experience. I think maintaining just connections and relationships professionally was a lot more difficult, and just sharing resources and helping each other out um, was definitely something that, I mean, wasn't surprising, as in engineering, everyone is very helpful towards each other. But what was actually surprising was, because the profession is so reliant on collaboration and sharing resources. I did experience some cases where some people were, uh, uh, I guess, not wanting to share resources.
Mm.
Yeah, I also kind of um, in one of my classes, you know, there was a group member who was a little reluctant to kind of do their part, which again, obviously it's a pretty competitive field, but at the same time, when you're working in a school system, whether you're working in administrative, actually teaching, if you're working for a school board, you're going to be working with other people, adults primarily, on a day-to-day basis. You're going to be, you know, coordinating with each other, deciding what type of lessons you're going to run that week, whether there's going to be a field trip and so on. And so just seeing kind of the lack of, I don't want to say compassion, but the lack of respect maybe that some of my peers had over the past 8 months. So that was a little weird. That's something that surprised me. But another thing that surprised me, and maybe you guys can speak to this more in terms of the fact that we're all in IS, we're all in sciences or like STEM-based programs and teachables, is the lack of instructors with kind of not only a science-based background, but the lack of
Yep.
instructors without classroom experience. And what I found in a couple of my tutorials was that the individual was, say, a PhD student, and obviously there's a degree of respect that you have to address that person, you know, kind of obviously in terms of their title, but also their position, in terms of the fact that they're grading you and educating you. But at the same time, it's like, okay, you're teaching me about theory in terms of applying it to a classroom, but you yourself don't have any actual classroom experience. And that's what I found kind of surprising, was that most of my TAs didn't actually have classroom experience, or if they did, it would be at the grade 1 level, at the grade 2 level, at the grade 5 level, which again, I mean, I love kids of all ages and I've always been good with them, but being in IS, where we're kind of each leaning towards the secondary school side,
Yep.
there was a lack of educators, or there was a lack of instructors who not only had a science-based background, but also were kind of lacking practical experience in terms of teaching secondary school level subjects. You know, like one of, obviously I'm not going to name drop stuff, but two of my profs this past semester, uh, one was a grade 3 teacher, one was a grade 5 teacher. Again, love those age groups, but that's not where I'm being taught. And a lot of our classes in those two courses were IS. And
Yep.
so that's kind of one thing that surprised me, was the lack of the lack of instructors in terms of them not having experience teaching in secondary school classrooms.
Yeah, I think you stole what I was going to say there a little bit.
My bad.
No,
My
no,
bad.
no, it's fine, it's fine. I was going to mention the fact that there's a lot of instructors that are more based towards PJ, so your elementary school is sort of your K through 6. And and I was surprised that they didn't have enough instructors that were IS based. But I didn't really see it too much of a big deal. I just think that it really did detract from some of our inclusion and diversity courses. Just for example, because what inclusion and diversity looks like in a secondary school classroom and sort of the assessments that you're going to be giving your students is very different from something that you're going to be giving to a kindergarten student or a grade 1 student. Um, so the theory was
Absolutely.
definitely very applicable and very nice, but there was sort of a lack of practical high school teaching experience in our instruction. Um, but I think one area that I was pleasantly surprised in, and I was a little bit hesitant about it with York, especially considering that they have sort of a reputation for going on strikes. But coming from a school which wasn't necessarily as big on social justice, obviously social justice is a part of any secondary, post-secondary institution. I really have appreciated how into social justice York University is. And I found it very
Absolutely.
nice
Absolutely.
just because it's something that we're going to be have to deal it's something that we're going to have to deal with, especially if we're going to be teaching the GTA and surrounding area, or even just anywhere in Canada. And I think it opened my eyes to a lot of problems or privileges that I haven't really noticed before. But with that said, I will also say that the university talks about sort of using diversity and inclusion and including it in your teaching practices and assessment methods and, having student-centered approaches. But I will say that I didn't come across that too much this year. I found the assignments to be very restrictive, and very much either, submit this reflection, submit this essay, 250 words, 1,000 words, whatever. And you couldn't choose the format that you wanted to submit assignments in, which was something that I think every class had talked about. Give student choice and give group work. And I just didn't come across a whole lot of that in first year. It was a lot of individual reflections, which is great for metacognition, and I think I learned a lot about myself as a teacher, but I really would have liked more chances to collaborate. Um,
Absolutely, yeah.
yeah, I think that's just sort of my experience. But yeah, I guess, what was your two favorite courses in university or like in teachers college, and why were they?
So I would definitely say one of my favorite courses was my physics teachable, where I actually met Jeff and Alex,
Yeah,
which is always a pleasure. I think that I enjoyed these courses because they were always synchronous courses, where we actually really got to interact. And I mean, even if it wasn't as relevant to my professional development, there was a lot of peer interaction, which is something that is quite difficult when you're online. And we did have a bit of practicality when it came to some lesson planning, as well as some micro teaching classes. So that was a little helpful when it came to getting comfortable teaching in front of a class, and even just teaching online in general. Um, my second course, I definitely would say, was my elective this semester. I took studies in pop culture. So we talked about a lot of different topics, different topic every class actually, and really had open dialogue where I guess the students were really the center of the class, and it wasn't lecture based at all. It was just kind of talking about what we thought of how pop culture is influencing the general public and society. And I just found it really interesting to hear other students' perspectives and all the implicit and explicit hidden messages behind certain types of pop culture that I never really saw or thought about the first time around.
Yeah, no, you make a good point, especially on that last sentence or two. I'd also say our science teachable is probably my favorite course. Getting to meet you guys, it's always a pleasure. We always have some great banter going on in class and outside of class. So that's definitely probably my favorite course I've been this far. Thus far. Another course that I've really enjoyed was the Adolescent Development. I think the course code was 1101,
yep, 1101.
1101.
Yeah,
Yeah, and 1101 was, I mean, my prof, Laura Temporal, she was amazing. She was a lot of fun. And we always had good discussions. She always gave us plenty of time, plenty of resources. One thing that she did a lot, and I used to do this a lot when I was in elementary school, but I never really did it throughout high school, personally at least, and in my undergrad. But making mind maps, to kind of relate concepts together. And I think mind maps are a really good way to, kind of bring together in like a nice organized space everything that you've learned in a given course. Because obviously, there are scientific methods proven for how you should study, how you should not, how you should take notes, how you should not, and so on and so forth. Obviously, that has to be applied at the individualistic level. But I found mind maps personally to be very helpful, especially when we would have to especially when we have to make mind maps for a given topic that, let's say, I know the topic pretty well, but I'm not sure how I want to present it. I'm not sure how to write notes for it. Mind map was super helpful because you have your focal point here or your focal message, then you kind of have these branches out and you can draw lines connecting things all over the place. And so I really liked that class, again, because the prof was excellent, but also in terms of the fact that she introduced me to kind of like a different style of information synthesis, a different style of summarizing information. And that's definitely something that I can see myself in my future practice employing or giving students as an option in terms of, okay, guys, show me how you've learned this. You know, if it's a science test, do I want them, like, you don't have to make a Venn diagram. You don't have to write 5 paragraphs. You can show it through a mind map that you understand the concepts. You know, I'm more than happy to do that. So obviously I like the teachable because I met you guys and it's kind of what I want to teach, the actual subject, but also 1101 because of the prof was awesome and just being exposed to a different style of information summarizing.
Yeah. No, and I think like I would definitely agree with both of you. But just to avoid choosing the same courses, because we sort of did take similar ones. I guess the first course I'm going to cheat a little bit on and say inclusion and diversity, even though those were two separate courses. Diversity was sort of the second part of inclusion. Um, I found those two were very informative. For example, doing our individualized education plans, that was sort of a great experience, and trying out different classroom teaching strategies that promote inclusion and respect the diversity within your classroom. I found those to be very helpful, especially as I've sort of already mentioned, with us going to be teaching in the GTA. I found them very applicable to what we're going to be doing. The only thing is, obviously, we need to put those into practice, so that comes with our school placements next year. And then the second course, I'd probably say would be my elective from this term, and that was urban education. So that course was all about how do we teach within culturally rich downtown areas. So, for example, how do we teach in Scarborough or the Jane and Finch neighborhood and still keep our pedagogical approaches or teaching strategies culturally relevant and responsive? And I think that was a big sort of topic throughout the whole course is culturally relevant and responsive pedagogy. But the whole course and all of the assessments were all about the teaching strategies that you would implement in your practice given what is happening in the community around you. So I think those two were my sort of favorite courses and what I learned the most from. And that actually brings me to my next question is what did the two of you learn the most this year? Or like what was the main takeaway from the year one teachers college?
So definitely to hop on Jeff's explanation of culturally relevant and responsive pedagogy was definitely a big topic of discussion in pretty much every course.
Yeah.
We talked about a lot to do with diversity oriented and inclusive education and really making sure that every student receives a meaningful educational experience um, and because they deserve that, which is the center of teaching now. And it's not about grades as much anymore as it is really helping students and guiding them and facilitating meaningful learning where students can really understand and find their roles in society as well as finding that sense of belonging where they feel a part of the school community and they can thrive and be motivated to truly learn and love to learn because being lifelong learners is the ultimate goal because every day I'm learning more and more from anyone around me. It doesn't matter how old or how young you are or where you've been. You can always learn something from people about their experiences and perspectives and cultures.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I definitely agree with both of those points. So as to not sound like a broken record, I'm going to talk about a little bit about something else. But one thing that I've gone to learn to appreciate is kind of all the work that teachers have to do behind the scenes. Like obviously, like my high school experience wasn't necessarily representative of an average high school experience. It was an IB high school, and so there was always kind of a certain expectation, not only for students but for teachers as well, to always stay on top of things and so on and so forth. But one thing I've learned about a lot and come to appreciate, as I've said, is the work that teachers do behind the scenes. You know, the count you're dealing with. If you're a teacher with a few years in the field, you probably have 3 classes a day with 30 kids. That's 90 different personalities that you have to navigate and that you have to work with and develop relationships with. Those are 90 different personalities that you've got to know, what their strengths are, what their weaknesses are, what kind of experiences and cultures they bring into the classroom. And from a student's perspective, I didn't really think about that because I was kind of, as every student should be, focused on their own learning, focused on themselves. but now I've really learned about like the hard work that teaching is. And I think the pandemic has hopefully put teachers in kind of a better light for the general public in terms of, garnering more respect from parents, garnering more respect from general society, because of how hard teaching is in general. And then you add an online component on top of it. It's hard to read personalities. It's hard to read emotions. You can't necessarily read facial expressions online, especially if cameras are turned off. And so that was a huge learning experience for me. And it definitely came into my practicum, which is, I'm sure, something we'll talk about down the line. But yeah, that's kind of a long-winded version of what I learned about this year.
Yeah. And I think, like, obviously, I could comment on both of what you already said, but just to avoid sort of sounding like a broken record, as you said, Alex, I think going off your point of getting to know sort of those 90 kids who are going to be in your classroom, and seeing them as individuals and seeing them for their lived experiences, I think for me, what I learned most about was how to develop not only your relationships, but equitable assessments to assess what they
Absolutely.
understand and how
Absolutely.
they bring their culture and lived experiences into the classroom and into the coursework. I think for me, my high school experience was a long time ago. Um, and David is the same, with both of us being a little bit older than most people in teachers college right now. Not too much older though, but just a little bit.
Yeah, I'm the
Um,
child of the group, but
yeah, but like I think for me, a lot of my assessments growing up were very objective. They were very like, this is right, this is wrong. Um, not much feedback. There wasn't much room for personal interpretation. And even going through university, that's what a lot of it was in science. And I think Teachers College has really changed that for me, and I'm really seeing the benefit of having subjective tests and someone bringing their experience into a classroom and into coursework is not something that's negative. It's not a deficit. There's nothing wrong with adding your own personal spin to the questions and answering things in a different way or using different testing methods instead of just your standardized tests. Having students submit presentations or dances or videos. I think those are something that's really been underrepresented in science assessments. So I'm actually getting quite excited to change that. And I think that's actually why I took the course I'm going to be taking in the summer as my elective, which is all about educational assessment and understanding growing success, which is a document in the Ontario curricula that all teachers need to follow. And it's all about how to create fair and equitable assessments for everyone in your classroom. And it deals with accommodations, different learning needs. It deals with equity and inclusion and diversity. Um, but yeah, like we'll probably get another podcast talking about assessment later on once we sort of take those courses, because I think, if I'm not mistaken, Alex, you're also taking educational assessment in the
I
summer.
I'm in one of. So what's your second class? I know you're taking two in the
Teaching and learning with digital technology is what I'm taking.
in C1, right, or C2?
Yeah, in C1, both in C1.
Yeah. So I'm in that second one with C1 with you, and so
Okay.
I mean that's also an important topic, right? Obviously the online world and doing things online and remotely has become so prevalent in the last 13 months, 14 months, not just in education, but also in, I mean, pretty much all facets of life, if you think about it. And
Mm-hmm.
so I think a course like that will definitely help us cater to the online teaching, but will also help us figure out what maybe doesn't work. As we know, not every student is going to have an access to a computer at home, for example, right? And
Yeah.
so coming up with, as you say, the focal point, or kind of combining your assessment idea into that, making equitable assessment not only for those who prefer online methods, but those who don't prefer online methods, or for those who online methods is not something that's as readily available as it is, say in school when there's a computer lab or there's, computer time and stuff like that. But yeah, no, I'm excited for summer school as well, for sure.
Sweet. And David, what courses are you taking in the summer again?
So I signed up for the sustainable
Nice. Yeah.
elective. because I've heard it's a lot to do with science education and a lot of outdoor education.
Mhm.
So I thought that would be quite helpful for coming up with lab activities and just ways of incorporating nature into the physics curriculum and really getting students excited and active when it comes to science.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And I signed up for educational assessment as well. Um, but I'm not 100% sure if I'm going to take a second summer course. But I definitely thought learning about assessment and creating different equitable and fair assessments for all your diverse students is very key to creating a, I guess, safe and fair environment for all students where everyone can be motivated to learn and thrive.
Yeah, I actually wish I could have taken sustainable education. Unfortunately, it just didn't fit into the timetable because it runs at the same time
Yeah.
as educational assessment for me during the C1 term. Which, for those of you who don't know what C1 and C2 is, our spring term is split into two portions. So the first 6 weeks is titled C1, and the second 6 weeks is titled C2. So some of us could enroll in C1 classes, some of us could enroll in C2. It all depended on course availability. But yeah, and then this brings me to my last question is what advice would you give to students who are looking into Teachers College or going to be going into their first year of Teachers College next year?
So I definitely have a few pieces of advice, not just one thing I'd say. My
Yeah,
first would definitely be enjoy working with people. Know that you enjoy working with people and um, make sure you try it out. If you're not really sure, volunteer with a group, coach a team, lead a club. Just become comfortable in a group setting and just interacting and chatting with people and truly bringing your unique gifts to those teams and clubs and groups. And I think a second one would definitely be don't apply to Teachers College if you think it's going to be easy or because you want extra holidays, because you'll definitely be in for quite a surprise.
yeah,
Teaching doesn't end in the classroom, it doesn't end at 4 p.m. when you get in your vehicle and go home. It's basically where teaching begins when you're reflecting on your lessons and just finding ways that you can improve your teaching practice to really make a difference in your students' lives. And even through the difficult times, make sure you keep that passion alive. Because there's always going to be times where you might come home and you're wondering, why didn't my lesson work today? Is teaching not the right thing for me? And that's not true. There's never like a perfect lesson, and you can always be adjusting and adapting to your students. So just keep that motivation and know that you are making a difference in your students' lives.
yeah. And I
Yeah,
just,
absolutely.
oh, sorry, Alex, I just want to jump in
No,
here real
no,
quick.
go ahead, go ahead.
Yeah, because I think there's something important to be said here. Is a lot of people are looking at teaching in terms of like, oh, it's a good salary and a good vacation time, and people think that they're done at 2:30 when school ends. And one thing I really just want people to understand is you're going to be involved in clubs and you're going to be asked to oversee clubs and different activities, and that's going to take a couple hours after school. You're going to need to do lesson plans for the next day, and those are three different lesson plans, and you need to create assessments for them, and that's going to take an hour to 2 hours each. And in your summer, you're going to either be taking online courses to up your specialization, so you're going to be taking AQ courses or ABQ courses, and you can look into those on your own time. Or you're going to be doing professional training. Um, so it's not something that you just get 2 months off in the summer. That you only get about a month in total, which sounds pretty nice, but during the school year, it's go, go, go. Um, so don't be doing it for the salary or the vacation time. Anyway, sorry, that's the end of my little rant, and I'm going to pass it
No
off to you,
worries. No,
Alex.
no, no, no. It's an awesome point. Obviously, David spoke to this as well, but the importance of reflection, and I feel in the world that we are in, especially because of social media, we've become acclimated to everything being instant, everything being super fast, super quick. I wanted this now. I want this in 5 seconds, blah, and so on and so forth. And it's important to, especially, if an 18 or a 19 or a 20-year-old is going to be listening to this, take time to reflect on as many aspects of your life as you're able to. And because that's what teaching, whether you're coaching, like David, I also have coaching experience in sports, reflecting, did my session go well today? What did the kids like? What did the kids not like? And so reflection needs to become a huge part of your daily life, and not just reflecting on your own assignments, but reflecting on how you interact with people. Which kind of leads into what David was also talking about, which is putting yourself out there. If you know you want to go into teaching, but you're not sure what subject matter, or you're not sure what age group you want to teach, work with as many kids as you possibly can. Work at a summer camp for 5-year-olds. Do high school volunteering for 14 to 17-year-olds. Put yourself out there so you can see what you really like, what you don't like, and then reflect. I've been very fortunate at the basketball academy that I work at to work with. Most of my coworkers are a lot older than me, and they've played professional sports. They've been in the Olympics. And one thing that they're always telling me is to reflect on your lesson plan, reflect on your interactions with people, reflect as much as you can on as many aspects of your life as possible, especially if you see yourself working in a career where you're going to be working with adults, where you're going to be working with kids primarily. Enjoy being with people, enjoy reflecting and learning about yourself and growing as a person, because you can't help kids grow and learn if that's not what you're doing for yourself. That's kind of it. I've summarized kind of what we've all said, added a little bit more, but that's about you got to enjoy it. Don't do it for the 2-month vacation, because as Jeff said, you're going to be spending, especially for the first 3 to 5 years of your career, you're going to be spending your summers either working as a summer school teacher, doing some sort of certifications to improve your own kind of qualifications, doing lesson plan prep. Maybe you'll teach overseas or something, who knows. Be prepared for a fun career, a very rewarding career, but especially in the first 3 to 5 years out of the gate, be prepared to work your tail off. And one thing that I've noticed a lot with you guys, because we talk about this obviously off camera and stuff, with a lot of people I've met, they're very determined. They have good patience. They're reflective people. They like to reflect. And so, you got to be able to do that. You got to be willing to put in the hours, especially for the first 3, 4, 5, 6 years of your career, coming out as a new teacher, fresh meat, as people like to say. It's a great career. I'm glad that we've all chosen it. Everyone I've met so far has been fantastic. There you have it. There's kind of my more word-based, a bit of a longer response than I probably anticipated, but
it's okay.
There you have it.
Yeah, I think something that hasn't been mentioned yet either is in the summers, like you're also, that is and Alex, you touched on this, but the summers is a really big time for unit planning and lesson planning.
Absolutely.
And tinkering with what maybe you already have and making it more relevant to current global events. And that's where I'm actually going to pick up my advice, is because of certain global events, our teachers' college experience has been very different from what it normally would be. So if I'm going to be talking about what a normal experience would be, I would say throw yourself into your practicum and give it everything you've got. Put any extra time you have that obviously you don't need for a mental break, because teachers' college is a bit of a grind. It does take up a lot of time.
Especially online.
So if you need the time, just for yourself, and everyone has family commitments and work commitments, don't let that get in the way of it. But whatever time you can, put it into your practicum, because those are where you're going to be getting your references from. Those are the people who are going to get to know you and potentially hire you. They're going to be sharing their resources with you, and you only have a mentor teacher for the 2 years that you're in teachers college. Once you're out on your own, you're expected to prep your own lessons and do everything by yourself. Obviously, like, you are going to be a part of a team and there's going to be a collaborative effort to some degree, but you're still sort of responsible for your own classes. So get as much as you can out of your mentor teacher, and get as many resources as you can, and get as many teaching experiences. Because I know I have a couple friends who are in their second year, and they've been asking their mentor teacher if they could teach once every couple of weeks, which obviously isn't very much because they're a little bit shy. But now that we've finished sort of the year, they're saying that they really wish they got more out of it. Whereas there were some people, which we know from our elective courses that had their school placements that they were very involved and it paid off a lot when they got to their assignments. So yeah, that would be my advice, is just do as much as you can with your practicum and get to know the principals and the teachers and start that networking experience as soon as possible. Especially if that's a school board you want to work in the future, because your pay salary and like your pay grade is basically based off how many years of teaching experience you have within a certain school board. So make your practicums count. But
Absolutely.
I'm actually going to end it there for this podcast because we've been going a little bit longer than expected. So I hope you all enjoy and have a great day. And thank you for tuning in to the inaugural episode of the Teachers Talk podcast. See you next time. Bye.